Hey everyone, it's RedditBot here again, and today, the trending posts we will be looking at is: keep picking me for a random locker search? Meet my underwear. Many years ago I worked for an outdoor activity center / playland in the retail department. Throughout the park, there were many different shops that we manned and I absolutely loved working there despite it being hard work for little pay. One day I had a run-in with a manager who seriously berated me in front of the entire team along with others from different departments. I was advised by a manager from a different team to make a formal complaint, which I did. Others came out with similar complaints and said the manager was advised to find employment elsewhere, but not sacked. Now, unbeknownst to me, I triggered the chain of events that would lead to me leaving the company. Now before the main story, there's some background info that is relevant to my malicious compliance. There were a few rules in place that were designed to prevent theft, including no more than £10 to be allowed on the shop floor, which was to be checked before your shift. Anything over this must be declared to management and left in your locker, and all staff had to agree to random locker / pocket searches. In the 2 years I'd worked here had never been picked for a random search. There were around several hundred employees, so the odds were incredibly slim. As soon as our disgraced manager left, I suddenly found myself picked at random for a search. This involved turning out my pockets, removing my shoes / socks, and then being escorted to the locker room to empty the contents out. Nothing was found, so I was sent back to the shop floor. The following week I was again picked at random for a search, which again turned up nothing. Rumors were soon doing the rounds that I had upset my department's remaining management team after instigating the action against my former manager, and they were going to force me out using any means necessary. I realized that I needed to act, so started job hunting and then began my malicious compliance. I started taking a backpack to work filled with £20 in pennies. Every morning I declared the amount in my locker as required, and sure enough, after a couple of days, I was once again selected for my weekly random search. I got paid to watch a security guard and supervisor count 2,000 pennies. As expected, I passed said search and off I went. This happened a second time with now £30 in pennies, and I decided to up my game. At the start of the following week, I patiently awaited my random search with glee, knowing what awaited them. The day soon arrived and off I was marched to the lockers ready for their treat. I lift out my backpack and pass it to the security guard and supervisor, who dived straight in without any gloves. Oh, I retched as they discovered what was in there. I had several pairs of my period-soaked pants waiting in there especially for them. They were gingerly laid on the floor beside my bag as they counted my bag of pennies. The smell from the pants was unreal. They'd been festering in there for days in anticipation. Once again the search revealed nothing, and off to work I went. After that, I was not picked for another search again. I left after a couple more weeks to a new job, and keeping in touch with some people I discovered that a new rule was introduced that tried dictating what you could and couldn't take to work with you. This soon led to a mass walkout of staff, and after a year the place shut down due to unrelated matters. Now, let's take in some of the comments. This is very malicious, and I don't feel a single shred of compassion for your former workplace. Whistleblowers need to be protected. End of. This was retaliation and you can and should report it. Piggybacking the last comment. There is a specific law in the UK in regards to this. Obviously not relevant in this case, but for anyone in a similar situation. The ethical, equitable, and lawful treatment of whistleblowers and the practical situation are unfortunately two different things. Enter period panties. Whistleblowers should be protected. Battlestar Galactica. Pete's. Pairs. Whistleblowers should be protected. Period. Panties. Nicely done. Congratulations. Well, that escalated quickly. Well played. That's by far my favorite of all the MCs I read, lol. They'll find a way to get rid of you either by grinding you down or through some technicality. There's still good ones out there. I know a place where a low-level whistleblower reported some star players in a company. They retaliated. The company fired 4 people right there. Whistleblower is still working. Yep. Whistleblowers are almost universally fucked regardless of the law in my experience. Maybe after a year or 2 you can get justice, but good luck dealing with all the ways you can be demonized, demoralized, and forced to retreat as an individual against companies with less personal investment and far more experience and money backing them. The stress I've seen people have to endure, even if all the evidence shows them to be completely right, is basically never worth it. It's sad, but it's not easy getting justice. I've been told repeatedly to complain about sexism at work. By various people, and it's never someone who's actually seen what happens to those who speak out. Of course there are lines someone could cross which I wouldn't allow, and when it's an issue that you have a chance of seriously correcting, that's great and more power to those with that courage. But on a personal level, regardless of the law, you will almost always lose out. An alternative strategy? Find a new job, then get vocal about what you saw. Now it is too late to retaliate, and if you do it right, the upper management will have no choice but to look into the location. Especially if you make it clear to folks outside the company and coworkers that you are quitting because you can't accept the unethical practices of your old boss/whatever. Make a stink on your way out and it is too late to retaliate. In many common law countries, the retaliation is grounds for claiming against the company for constructive dismissal too. It's an opportunity to be compensated a fair bit for what is basically unlawful employment conduct. True about whistleblowers getting fucked. I reported my workplace for not following COVID laws. They weren't told it was me, but I'm the only one there who cared, and now I'm isolated in a different room and don't get to talk to anyone all day. Plus, can't use a computer for personal use anymore, technically an office-wide rule, but I'm pretty sure it was put in place to make it easy to fire me if necessary. I'm in a secretary-type position. I have literally nothing to do all day but play on my phone now. If you're earning money, then get that bread. Joke's on them. Seriously. At first it was boring, but now I get paid to play games and study while occasionally answering the phone? Pretty sweet gig. Now if only my coworkers would stop being such goddamn jerks. I had an employer that was classifying us as independent employees so they could avoid taxes and overtime even though we were clearly full-time employees, and then some. I was fired about a week after bringing it up to management along with some pretty serious safety issues. Got a lawyer and took them to court. In the end I not only came out on top, but some of the facts presented in my case were used as evidence to help a former coworker win a pretty significant injury case against them a few years later. It was super stressful and demoralizing at times, but it doesn't always end up bad. That's great. Genuinely. Well done. That's great. Genuinely. Well done. Just look at Snowden. Ellsberg, Manning, Snowden, Assange. Deep Throat, FBI Deputy Director Gray. Gary Webb, he committed suicide with 2 gunshots to the back of his head. Is that you? Gary Webb, he committed suicide with 2 gunshots to the back of his head. You. So true. It was interesting being an 18-year-old woman in a giant airplane manufacturing plant in WA state. My appearance seemed to be my whistleblowing there, female/18 in a factory with more middle-aged men than honest to fucking God I thought were alive. After only a month the SL harassment was rampant and terrifying. Had my car broken into 4 separate times in the 3 fucking years I worked there, idiots leaving me gifts and notes and SHT after damaging my property to do so. Thanks, every person on this earth should be so lucky, right? Anyway, around my 3-year seniority date there, airplane factory management decide to drug test me, to fire me, union establishment, they must delve deep into your psyche and force you to quit basically, which they will unabashedly and gleefully do. After my clean test came back, 2 paid weeks later, fucking morons, I made 4 copies of my RTW form, have them to the 4 shocked, stupid faces who thought they got me, and after they each had that paper I pieced the FCK out. It was ridiculous. I made great money, great benefits, I would have loved to have been able to stay. 14 years later I still wish I could stayed there. But, I'm cute, so why be sad, right? What's an RTW form? Return to work, at a guess. There is protection for whistleblowers in the US also. You won't get fired or disciplined for being a whistleblower. They will punish you for any other reason they can make up. One day you are a stellar employee with 0 disciplinary actions, the next you're in HR with a list of things you've gotten into trouble for over the years. It's magic. There is protection for whistleblowers in the US also. You won't get fired or disciplined for being a whistleblower. They will punish you for any other reason they can make up. One day you are a stellar employee with 0 disciplinary actions, the next you're in HR with a list of things you've gotten into trouble for over the years. It's magic. I need to see the US link posted for this in the same easy to read breakdown. I know several people who need to see it in such easy terms. Yes. And from a government website. It is also worth knowing that this can be enforced by arbitration services and going to an industrial tribunal, which is free to make a claim and you do not need to pay for legal representation. Yes. So many workers just don't know their rights and the scumbag employers exploit the fuck out of people. People who don't think they have any other choice because they need the job. Scumbag bosses exploiting people's weaknesses happened to my wife, and I tried to get her to fight the bullshit that the new manager was pulling on her, but she just didn't know how to proceed, and we were in a tight spot because we had just, like a month before, had a kid and we needed the insurance. That bitch set us back a fucking decade financially. Lol, I died a martyr at my last job because I had the nerve to call out my manager's garbage behavior. I got pushed out. But I dug in my heels and made it clear I was waiting for her to blink first. She quit about a week before she was slated to actually be fired. We all celebrated, but I couldn't bring myself to stay. The stress of the situation soured my outlook on the whole rest of the job, so I ended up moving on. Sounds like you did not die a martyr, but left as the winner of a battle to find new grounds. Tiring, but from what it sounds, not the worst development. Whistleblower protect laws will unfortunately never work. I believe Canada has some laws against it. Meanwhile, I was laid off after having hurt my back on the job site. They claimed they had too many laborers. Meanwhile, they hired 3 new ones a month later. I found out because my mother worked in the office doing payroll. Which is evidence of a wrongful termination and a whole other matter you could go after them for. Not just retaliation, this is textbook constructive dismissal, which is illegal in the UK. I'm assuming OP is from UK based on the pound. Employment Tribunal would have a field trip with this one. Except it probably wasn't the first level supervisor and security guard making the decision to fuck with her. It's sort of like shooting the messenger. Which means that they, in turn, should complain upwards, not to OP. Not that I think they did. I'm with OP on this one. If the messenger doesn't say, hey, maybe we shouldn't harass this employee on management's behalf, they also deserve what they get. Collaborators shall not be countenanced. Not the messenger, the cop/mercenary sent to punish you. Very true, Xavier, only following orders. I hear it's a common defense. Need to be protected, period. Well, I see your point, but gotta feel bad for security who had to check the bags. It wasn't their decision to target OP. They were just doing what they were instructed. And were the ones who actually got the payback. They must have known what they were doing was shady at that point. They could have stood up for OP, who was obviously being targeted unfairly, or they could have remained complicit. I guess they weren't expecting to be a participant in a period drama. There will be blood. I drank your milkshake. I drank it up. That ain't no strawberry milkshake. You can tell by the smell that there's something in the well. Drainage. My partner tracks my cycle and announces this in reference to the film several days before Shark Week. What the bloody hell? Touché. No touchy. Well done. You would have had grounds for constructive dismissal if you'd put a claim in within 6 months of leaving and before they shut down. England has that law too? Yep. For anything the US has with regards to employee rights, it can be assumed that every other developed country either has it or is better. But the US has freedom to work. For less ain't nowhere as free, and people got rights like in the US of A. Spitz Y, right here in Tennessee, we're what's referred to as a right to work state. That means that employers are essentially permitted to fire anyone for no reason at any time. USA. 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 Actually, right to work means something like joining a union cannot be a condition of employment. You're thinking of it will employment. I always thought the name of that law/concept was funny as well, because to me, when someone says right to work, it's suggesting that I have a right to work as set forth by the US Bill of Rights, and as such no one should be able to fire me for unjust cause. Essentially the opposite of what it really means. But hell, I was kind of a thick kid, and I'm still a pretty thick adult. It's a right to work divested from a governing body like a union. More properly, the fire whoever whenever is at will employment, which is distinct but usually entangled with right to work. What's referred to as a right to work state? That means that employers are essentially permitted to fire anyone for no reason at. A right to work state is a state that does not require union membership as a condition of employment. The right to work doctrine, originally established in the National Labor Relations Act, NLRA, of 1935, gives employees the option to refrain from engaging in collective activities such as labor organizing and union representation. What you described is the employment at will doctrine, which is what governs employer and employee rights in terminating an employment relationship. Both the employer and an employee can terminate an employment relationship at any time without consequence. The employment relationship can be terminated for any reason or no reason at all. The employer cannot, however, terminate an employee for an illegal reason, such as termination based on discrimination against certain protected classes such as sex, gender, race, religion or national origin, violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and termination in violation of the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. The US is number 1 in potential for improvement. Looks like it would have to be within 3 months, but yes. What does that mean exactly? Constructive dismissal. Constructive dismissal means that you weren't fired, but instead your life was made hell enough that you wanted to leave on your own. Basically, you get bullied out. Deciding to fire someone and then constructing a reason to do so, a work environment that causes them to quit, though the constructive dismissal itself is still considered a dismissal, not a voluntary resignation. Constructive dismissal doesn't involve an actual firing. It's when they decide they want to fire you but instead force you to voluntarily quit by making your job hell, harassing you, changing your responsibilities, creating a hostile environment, etc. In the US it's more or less any involuntary resignation. I think I get it. If you can prove they wanted to harass you until you would want to quit instead of firing you, the company gets in trouble and you keep your right to benefits? That correct? In a nutshell, yes. Thanks. I have learned something new today. Yep. I'm not a lawyer, but that's my understanding. Oof, yeah, my bad, Lo. I was conflating it with the law enforcement concept of parallel construction, haha. Thanks. My daughter had this situation. I advised her about constructive dismissal. She kept a diary for a couple of months, then quit and sued for constructive dismissal. She won. Infuriating practices to double screw someone that busted their ass for you. What ring of hell is reserved for posts that do this? Glad she won and that there is some kind of protection in place against this. While winning, did she only get rightful income, or is a kind of penalty added for the suffering and trouble you went through because of it? But, generally, only if you've worked there for at least 2 years. I was picked for the totally random drug test every quarter in the army. I didn't do drugs, but the couple of guys that did, and everyone knew, never got picked for the random test. And guys, that's where we ended today. Thanks for watching and remember to subscribe for more educative, entertaining Reddit contents like this.